Hello guys, and welcome to Geopolitical Simulator Power and Revolution. Today I'm going to give you a beginner's guide on diplomacy. So just to get started, what can we already see about diplomacy from this screen? Well, notably, it does highlight major cities and capitals of other nations when we're looking at the map right here. The color is color-coded in terms of relations. Bright green means they love you. Light green means they like you. White, gray, whatever you want to call that, means they're okay with you. Light red, like pink right there, means that they dislike you. And dark red means they hate you. The main way I would suggest interacting with diplomacy is by going into diplomacy and setting a meeting request. You can even change the date to be as soon as possible. For example, we would set tomorrow with the Prime Minister of the UK. Hit OK, and we have ourselves a meeting to interact with. Though that is not the only way. You could also right-click and go to military operations and hit create a military alliance, pulling up the strategic pacts, which allows you to discuss with any nation that you can also select from right here. The different forms of diplomacy agreements that this series has had as its core form of diplomacy for almost all of existence between non-aggression, support, alliance, as well as some other rights, which we will go over. Additionally, there is a diplomacy screen here where there's been updates as Power and Revolution specifically has gone on. We have new options. For example, immigration agreements. As you see, this always will open up that little book. Scientific cooperation. We can break off all agreements with a country. We can manage foreign embassies, though this is more of a relationship effector than it is anything else. It doesn't have a lot more other results from it. You can also manage your embassies abroad, basically just closing and opening based on their current status. You can have an entry ban for a head of state, just stopping that person from showing up. Another thing that mainly just affects relations, though your main use for this is going to be worsening relations, because by default, most of these are going to be open. You can also repatriate national from abroad. This has a very similar function. We have arms embargoes, which is more for trade than it is diplomacy. Basically, everyone in the world starts out with a similar set of embargoes right here. And this not only goes on arms, but also on industries for a lot of these nations as well. This is not the most useful. It doesn't really affect diplomacy a whole lot. It more just affects who has access to certain industries of yours. There's a screen like this for literally every industry. They've also added bilateral agreements for foreign exchange. This is something that's like, it affects mostly relationships. Again, like so many of these other ones. So this is just one that you have to enable by default instead of disabling, and this can also cost a little bit of money. Similarly, you can initiate a year of culture. This is once again similar. This is going to affect your relationships, but otherwise, so many of these are flavor. The ones that are not flavor, I will go deeper into. The ones that are flavor, I'm going to tell you their flavor, and that's all we're going to talk about. And even financial sanctions against other countries. This has more to do with war. If there's a war going on, you can enable sanctions. Another way to view this is to go to an active war, select the main conflict, and manage your financial sanctions against one of the sides, either lifting or applying them, and even other things are available here, like the break all relations. You could give weapons to a country, provide military aid for a country in its war against another country. So just select like Ukraine, and I wish to give defensive aid. You know, I wish to send my units and have them do this. This is an intervention right here. This is a way to kind of automate your units to go there and do something effectively. This used to just be something that you would manually do, but now they set, I don't know, like specific automation options for it. But it's still the same AI. It'll still do the same as it did before. Give weapons to a country. You could literally go in your weapon stocks and say, give them all your old tanks. Look at it. Look at all these old ass tanks that America somehow has. I don't know how we would ever have tanks this old that we're using, but apparently we do. We could just go give them away. You can also sell them to the black market, but again, that's really more an economic thing. You can sell them to the black market, things like that, or just give them away to other countries. Then we can see the list of conflicts in the world, sorting by all countries or starting with the ones we have selected. We can see all the different conflicts that are happening. and we can have a little interaction screen with all of them where we go and get options on how to interact with them. We could see the details of conflicts that are going on here, get stats about the number of kills, desertions, etc., and see conflicts that are associated with this one. For example, if there is a war between Syria and someone else, then someone else can have their own conflict with that nation that is attached, such as if we did that intervention option, where it would have a specific function, like bombing only, like they're only using the Air Force to bomb, they're not sending land forces in, defensive, things like that. We can see the alliances we have with others. We can even select all countries. So for example, I want to see Albania's diplomacy with all countries. And then I could sort by status, sort by rights of passage. Then we have the economic contracts, which again, I think it's more of an economy thing. And then also new, a free trade agreement. Basically, you select any country you want, or in the case of Europe, a fucking entity. And you can set up these different things like reciprocal commercial contract, halves tariffs. It determines border regulations of goods. We can also raise it to a global economic treaty, greatly reduces tariffs, even further weakens border controls. These things do matter because this affects stuff like illegal immigration, but something like recognition of country of origin label by the partner, that doesn't fucking matter. That doesn't mean anything. That's just flavor. And then economic and political agreement pact. A lot of this stuff is just like flavor. This is like an economic pact that can potentially fall apart if you don't match politically. It wipes out tariffs completely if there are any. This stuff is a little more niche. It's not too large to the functions of diplomacy. Again, more economy based. Now that we've shown you the options though, let's get into more of the specifics. And so I think I will do this by using the meeting here. So here we have our meeting. The contracts are the same even outside of this meeting. The only difference is that here we can offer a coffee, glass of champagne, so we can get him more agreeable to us, and that does make him more agreeable to us, yes. But otherwise, if I do propose scientific cooperation here or outside of here, it's going to be the same function. Speaking of this one, effectively, you just pick a area of research, astronaut training, right? Or, well, that doesn't want me to do that one. Military, and we can pick a target. We could pick a research that neither of us has, like the high velocity missile. And then we could determine in millions of dollars here, what do we want each country to allocate? So I could say something like 10 billion. And then based on my relationship with that country, how rich that country is, if this country actually wants this, they will come back to me and tell me, yes, let's work together on this. This is to boost your progress towards getting specific researches, which if you do go to research, you can open the discovery tree, click on anything that you do not have here, and see the probable outcome when the game predicts that you will acquire that technology. We can also do the sales contracts from here, an economy thing. We could also do the immigration agreements from here. And here we have immigration and emigration, basically determining where the migrants are coming from. And then you choose for what purpose. The person starting the agreement determines the importer in terms of economy or the immigrator in terms of immigration. So here we're asking to immigrate United Kingdom citizens. So the top option is like, you're going to immigrate specifically workers for the purpose of filling up construction capacity. If you're building a lot and you don't have enough population for construction, this is a way to get more in your construction industry. You're importing workers, not citizens. You could use this to detain asylum seekers. You could use this to limit the flow of illegal immigrants. So it could be a border control thing instead. Even the return of illegal immigrants to their country of facilitation. So you could, if you have a lot of illegal immigrants coming from one nation, just kind of set up a deal where you're returning those individuals back to get them out of your country. This is one way to fight illegal immigration if you have it. And you can even financially compensate in millions the other nation involved in this. And then there's emigration, which is basically the same thing, just from the other perspective. effectively. And that's what that is. You can also have some other interactions here that are different depending on every single person you are interacting with, but you can request that someone imposes financial sanctions on an aggressor country in a war, as I've shown you that you can already do. You can also encourage them to influence others to make an effort against global warming, changing the actions of certain heads of state. You can encourage them to do things against global warming. You can encourage them to make the same decision as you at G7 summits. There's other options here. Let's say you're talking to a dictator. You can encourage them to make efforts for human rights and etc. You could scold them. But the probably most important part of diplomacy in this game, I've saved for last for some reason, which is the strategic pact. This is the meat of diplomacy in the game. This series has had this as like the only diplomatic option for most of its lifespan, and this is what it is. By default, you will start out with nothing, and then you can choose a type of agreement you want, if you want any, right? You don't even need anything, but you might want non-aggression. Okay, cool. Support is mutual defense. I don't know why they word it as support. Alliance is what it sounds like. It's a military alliance. If you attack, I attack. That's what it is. Then in addition to whatever you have here, we have access rights. This is separate. You can propose this by itself, a change in this. The way this works is whichever side that has like the X's here, this is the one granting this right. So if air is checked on the left here, but not the right, I am granting the UK access to my airspace militarily. That's why this is set up this way, because effectively the Brits are allowed to fly over America and use our like seas, go through our ports areas, but they're not allowed to start landing their troops here. Whereas I am allowed to do that in their country. I'm allowed to do everything. Additionally, we can request military bases. So right now I have permission to make one military base in the UK. They do not have that capability in my country, but I can grant them this capability. So, for example, you saw a bombing with Russia and Syria. We can effectively grant someone a base, or vice versa, right? Get the ability to go into their airspace, and then we build an air base, and then do air bombing of terrorists and other things that we feel like doing without actually being able to have land units leaving and running around and engaging and stuff like that. So that's just an option of what you can use this system for. Then billeting authorization. This is a newer feature, a very long requested feature. Bases shared by two nations. This effectively makes it so that instead of needing to even request military bases that you are paying for, you can actually share bases. So if I don't want to have permission to build bases of my own that I fully control and put stuff into and place at will, rather, and pay for, by the way, that costs money. Rather, I can request permission to dump my units into their military bases and operate from there. Or vice versa. Whenever you propose any kind of treaty, then you're going to have to wait for the person to get back to you. If you're in the meeting, then you don't have to wait a couple days to hear back. You'll just hear back immediately. It'll go back and forth on agreements. Some of them might be yes or no outright, depending on which type we're talking about. Some of them, if there's money involved especially, will be a negotiation where you can go back and forth. The AI will get tired of going back and forth eventually. So something to keep in mind, don't play hardball forever. Your relationship, though, will affect what a nation is open to doing with you. Now, there's very few ways to raise and lower relations. It will happen over time as you interact with nations, interact with them economically, make deals with them, that kind of thing. Economic deals, that's a great way to do it. And even giving them weapons if they're in a war, things like that. That will help. But additionally, if you see a nation that has a disaster, send emergency aid. Now, do this with what is within your budget, but this is the most reliable way to actually raise your relationship with a nation. Things like giving weapons, this is all newer. This wasn't in the game before. This is the oldest and most reliable way. Just literally give them emergency aid. There is also technically developmental aid that you can give someone, and that does affect relations quite a bit as well if you are a donor in terms of your economic status down here in the AIDS screen. But disaster relief is a one-off sum that you can do that will, in a lump sum way, permanently affect your relationship with somebody else. And this is in my opinion, and just long-standingly, the most effective way to raise relations with someone. As you've seen, there's a bajillion different ways to lower relationships with all those different flavor treaties and flavor actions that you can take, as well as even just cutting any economic aid that you are giving them. That would certainly help as well. Befriending the enemy of someone would probably help you with that as well, but it's not impossible to get everybody in the world loving you. There is also one extra note that I wish to tell you, which is this isolated little thing right here. Not Puerto Rico, but this light blue color, different from all the other colors. This is a dependency. And a dependency is kind of like a client state, but its purpose is to effectively be locked in a forever military alliance with you. That is what they are. You can force this as the result of winning a war on another nation, so that they will always come to help you in your wars, whether they be offensive or defensive. They do not work like client states in other games where you siphon off money from them all the time. Rather, you are just making the military arm of a nation serve you pretty much exclusively, as they will not really start seeking military conquests of their own. It is one way to conquer the world without expanding your nation, which is very useful considering the fact that conquering in this game breaks the game really, really quickly every time that you do it. It's a very buggy game. So something to consider if the normal conquests break your game more than you would like. A way to still expand in power without expanding in territory. And that's effectively it. That is what a beginner needs to know about diplomacy, probably a little bit more. I hope this guide has been helpful to you. If you want to see any more guides on Geopolitical Simulator, leave your suggestions, your requests in the comments below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them as well. If I cannot answer them, hopefully somebody else will be able to answer them. But for now, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.